Enjoy your trip? Were you on
Hey
a trip?
everyone. Yeah, I was in New York for about 5 days, seeing my family. My dad's 94, so I try and get in a couple of times a year. His health is not so good,
Mm.
so but it was a really good trip.
That where you're from? New
New
York?
York, yeah.
What part of
You
the New
don't
York?
hear it.
Is it New York City or somewhere else? Like
Just
upstate?
outside
Just
suburbs.
outside. Cool.
I guess my accent's kind of fading then.
Oh no, I figured. I just didn't know if it was upstate or if it was like actually in the city or in the boroughs or something, you know?
Yeah, I lived there for many years.
Mm.
Uh, I used to sit with a Zen group back in the 90s in Manhattan for
Mm.
years.
Oh, that's cool. Oh yeah, you did tell me that. I remember that.
Yeah, I just thought I'd check in. I think there's a question buried in it. Um, I'm just, in a way, I'm tempted to just start off with the question.
Okay, go ahead.
For me, I'm sure it's got something to do with the way I am. There's always like a focus on techniques or technical issues or practice or something like that. And there's been a lot of uncertainty in my approach. I think I've been at this long enough where I'm just sort of kind of at this point where some frustration kind of setting in and wondering like what I'm doing and
Hmm.
why, that kind of stuff.
I had I had tons of frustration, especially in the sort of second half of this. But what it is that there your primary I thought or the identification is trying to take ownership of the path or your experience, thinking that it can control it with a certain technique or a practice and make something happen. And when it's not happening or there's confusion about it, then the frustration comes up as a sensation. And so what that is there's a view operating there from the get-go that is automatically taking the I thought to be real and that it can control the experience. So that's something to be seen and worked with right off the bat. The belief, that view or belief that I can make something happen with a certain technique, and if it's not working, I want to know the next technique that will. And if it don't, I'll move on to that next technique, or maybe the next teacher, or maybe the next, practice, or maybe I'll just give up on it altogether, is what the mind says to us, the thought process says, because it's not giving me what I want when I want. And I was that way too, you know. But it's that very thing is the obscuration to what already is, and that's what needs to be seen through and worked with. And it's like you wear it down. You wear it down by not giving it the attention it wants, by keeping the attention here and seeing that process in action weakens it. And if you go with it, you accept its premise or its hypothesis that the next technique will give me control. If you accept that hypothesis, then you are reinforcing it, or it is being reinforced with the belief in that thought. See what I mean?
Yeah, I do. As I'm listening to you, like I'm also watching the mind spin.
Yeah, good. That's meta awareness. That's what it takes. But that's what happened with me, and I got extremely frustrated for a while, probably probably for a period of about 6 months, and Angelo, just going back and forth with Angelo over time and him just pointing. He wasn't giving me any answers. He's just saying, look at this, look here. and he wouldn't let me off the hook in that way, because letting it off the hook is allowing thought to take control. So as a pointing, it was helpful, and I just wore that down. I just wore it down with seeing, and not letting it have me, so to speak, have the attention. You know what I mean? So if there's frustration, first you need to feel it. Because if you take that frustration and then you let the judgment thoughts grab you about it, it's reinforcement. So you have to notice, you have to feel the frustration as it comes up as a sensation, allow it to be there, no rejection, no blame, no judgment. It is what it is in the moment. Even if you're frustrated at this moment, it doesn't mean you will always be frustrated, but you have to accept the frustration. That is the truth of the experience, and work with what you have instead of trying to should it away or push it away with another technique, right? Because that's what I did too. You have to realize you're doing that, accept that that's happening. Just like an alcoholic has to admit, I'm drinking, I have a problem, I need to do something about it. I am a thinking, identified person. This is causing me suffering. Something needs to be done about it. But the doing is seeing. It's not the next technique. It's not the next teacher. The teacher is the pointer. He's not the answer. So the seeing is here as a responsibility that everyone has to take. And a lot of, most people, especially in the regular world, don't do it. They blame, or they become a victim, or they tell their story and they say, "Oh, woe is me," or they say, "I can't." But reality doesn't care. And the sooner that someone can see that reality is already fully acceptance is in full acceptance of itself. So you can't convince it that something needs to change with like a thought. That's like a candle trying to negotiate with the sun. It's like the sun doesn't want to become the candle because that's small and fearful and full of attachments. It's everything. It doesn't want to negotiate, and it never will. And someone can't victimize themselves, blame someone else enough for that to change. So then, after we've beaten our head against the wall enough times, which God knows I did, when I say this stuff, it is not a criticism of anyone. It is a criticism of myself, because I did that for 20 years or so. And it took that long for me to discover that truth about that. So when I reiterate it so much here, is because I don't want people to go through that, because it was horrible. It's like when Angelo says you start waking up, it's like you better not resist it, because if you do, there'll be hell to pay. And that hell can be frustration, or it can be anger, or victimhood, or whatever the case for whoever. Which is why I reiterate the seeing aspect of it so much, and not the doing. You have to see those processes as they arise. So when the frustration happens, you feel it first, let it be there, acknowledge, accept, feel, and then inquire. What are the processes that are coming up, claiming ownership of that frustration in the moment? And what can be seen about that process right here and now? And the closer you can catch it happening as it's arising, like you were talking about doing, that's where that's where the beliefs can be deconstructed right then and there. And it won't happen. Well, it could happen one time, because I've done that, but most of the time that groove needs to be worn down with keeping the attention here and not letting it take you. And just as importantly, when it does take you, not to judge yourself for it taking you, because it's just a conditioned pattern.
Well,
The more you can see the conditioned pattern, or the self, or the selfing, as a conditioned pattern of experience and not Paul, the better off you'll be. The more relaxed you'll be about it, the less stress, the less frustration. It's just like, oh, it is what it is right now. How can I work with it right now? You know what I mean?
so it sounds like a recognition that, like, this is what's happening. This is what my conditioning wants to do with it. And in my case, there's this kind of a wanting to be proactive and do something about it.
That is the thought of ownership that you need to see as it's happening. I need to do something about it. That is the ownership of the sensations show. Even the thoughts are just a sensation, but there's an ownership there that shows up that says, this is frustrating. I need to do something about it. But you're just whipping up the storm there. That makes it more and more frustrating. You have to find
Yeah.
like the stillness there and then watch from that stillness why it's coming up.
So if I can catch that, then there's sort of a not doing,
It's always not doing.
but there is kind of a doing because it's kind of a like boiling things down to an inquiry in a sense.
But are you doing that, or is that just the conditions of experience boiling it down? The thought, the thought things rolling on, the condition pattern of boiling down. Is there a Paul there separate from that that's happening? Or is there something taking that in that's not Paul, that's just watching it happen?
Right. It feels like there is.
Right. That's the identification. That's the sense of selfing, but it's
Right.
not separate or real,
Right.
but it's a sense and it's there. It's there as a contraction, it's there as a process, swirling urge to grab. But that can be seen too from before that. I don't like saying before, but sometimes you just have to.
So can I just kind of shift gears a little bit with you, Tony? I want to ask you a question.
Yep.
And I've heard you say this, use this term once or twice before. I think uh, concentration practice. And
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if you could say some more about that. I'm sorry if this came up recently. I haven't been at the last few meetings, so
Everything is
want you to.
repetition here. Don't worry about it. Everything will be repetition here over and over again.
And I'm
So,
kind of curious, like your personal
right,
experience.
that's what I'm going to talk about. So, when I started first working with David as a mentor in 2016 or so, I had meditated some, but not much, not as any kind of continuous practice. But talking to him, he talked to me about the different types of meditation and what he thought would work good for me. And he thought concentration was very important and that I should do it first for a good while before I even started on insight work. So I did concentration practice, which is breath at the nose, basically, for a year without touching any insight work. And of course, my mind was really wanting to wake up, right? So it was, I had already had an awakening, but it wanted further, it wanted more, and it was frustrated, and it was blah, 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 blah. So what I say was happening now was that I was an algorithm of pattern conditions. Then I met this Hurricane David, who has a name David, but was also a pattern condition, which you might say a pattern condition of awakeness, of realization, who introduced a new condition in my experience into my algorithm that said, concentration practice is very helpful. You should do that. I took that into my algorithm as another condition, and our hurricanes were swirling together as conditions while we worked together. And taking that on, I started doing concentration practice. Now, Tony might say Tony started doing concentration practice and decided to do it, but really, there's no ownership of thoughts there. So it was just a tendency to roll on of a new condition that moved me into meditation, concentration meditation, until another set of conditions later where he suggested something else. And I trusted him. Okay, now you've done that long enough because I was reporting every single day. I was writing out my meditation session to him in an email every day for a year. And he was saying this and this and this and new conditions introduced, and slowly the landscape of Tony changed over time. Tony got very concentrated. Hurricane Tony got very concentrated. And then he started doing other things that widened his gaze, other practices that helped. Lots of things were coming in that were frustrating as the mind was grabbing. He saw that. He grabbed on as a thought. It made it harder or easier. Same as I'm saying to you, it was either weakening it or reinforcing it. I was judging, clinging, grasping. Slowly over time, I started to see the futility and the suffering in that. It eased up a little bit, a little less grasping. And then the tendencies roll on. And that's what's happening here with every one of us. When you interact with me, our conditions are interacting, and you may take something in, but in nowhere in that experience will you find a separate Tony or David or Paul controlling that experience. But there's something taken in that is neither Paul or Tony. I keep looking at David's name up here, so it's throwing me off. Paul or Tony, there's something there that's taking it in that is neither one, that is everyone, but not as a person, right? As the seeing without a center that doesn't need to be named, or that ultimately can't be named, but is often tried to be named. But those are just Tony, Paul, everyone is a designation. And so is anything else. So is consciousness. So is formless awareness. And then the mind will grab onto that and say, I am formless awareness, and take it on as a belief and an identity and make a conclusion about reality. And it feels good to make a conclusion, but it's only a temporary feel good. It doesn't solve anything. The real solving is to be okay with not having to make conclusions. And then you back out into mystery and can live that way without something needing to be one way or another. I don't need to say that I have no self, and I don't need to say that I have self. I can be in the middle, which is like balanced on the line, on the wire, without needing something to be one way or the other. And that's like living in immediacy. So the practice is to not get knocked off the wire by being grabbed and taken into thought belief. I was saying something to Annie this morning about the attention that we're funneling into thought, that's being funneled into thought through pattern conditioning, is claiming ownership of something that's already happening. So all these sensations are already here and happening already, immediacy. And then something comes in and wants to claim it and be small and claim it. It wants to go in and control and turn around and try to control something that's already happening, and then say, this is mine. And it's not being controlled, but it wants to. And the frustration is, fuck, I can't control it. But reality the whole time is saying, I'm doing all this work. I don't know why the hell you're working. Just let it go. You don't need the extra step because I'm already in control. That's Banki's unborn. Everything is managed perfectly managed in the unborn. The unborn is before thought, or it is not. It's before identification. Thought appears in the unborn as the unborn, but the identification is the grabby belief that something needs to be controlled. So, you know what I mean? You understand what I mean by the conditions, how easily a designation can slip in. And so it's just seeing through that belief over and over and over again and weakening that storm till it settles.
Yeah, you broke up there a little bit. I think my connection's not perfect, but
You were freezing a little bit looking at me like I was seeing you, and so it
yeah,
may be
yeah, but I got
did you
almost all
hear?
of it.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. Like I can tell there's still some confusion here about will and
That's okay.
intention, but mostly I get what you're saying. Um,
Even
I
intention
could say a lot
is a
more,
batch of conditions.
but I don't want to take up any more time.
Okay. Yeah, you're starting to break up a lot now.
Yeah,
If you
sorry.
want to go out, if you want to go out and come back in, I'll readmit you in case your internet's got a funky thing going on.